All right, welcome to yet another episode of The Voice of Generation Climate, The Voice of Gen Z. Today we have the co-founder of Climes, Siddhant Jayaram, or as we all call him, Sid. Sid, what a pleasure to have you today. I've been waiting for this conversation between us for a while. I think it's a great way to actually, close out the year, because in the Climes journey, we're about 15 months in from the time that we started this first as a project. Now it's a full-fledged company. We have so many consumer brand partners, enterprise brand partners, 16 people on the team. I just feel like we've taken a whole different shape from where we first began. And as we close out this year, would love to talk to you about, the journey along the way. What have we learned? What has clearly worked? What's not worked? So great to have you here. Let's actually start by talking about how we've built up the team over the last 15 months. From where from June last year, if you just kind of want to chart out a journey along the way.
Yeah, firstly, Ani, thank you for having me here. I've heard from a lot of friends who've heard the first few episodes that, it's extremely fun. And yeah, great to have you, Ria, and Sabah start this new initiative, which is the Voice of Gen Z. And I'm glad to be a part of it. And coming to the aspect of building the team, when I look back over the last 15 months, right, I don't think both of us could have achieved what we've done over the last sort of year and a half without the support of these incredible climates, right? And when I look back in the initial days, when Payal, Yash, and Sabah took a bet on the two of us, right, and the five of us went out to do it, I sometimes wonder, what did they see in both of us that we'll end up sort of building an institution or building at least the first level of what it takes to build an institution, right? So starting with them when we had literally no money in the bank, just a project idea back in June, to winning Terra Studio, getting that $4,000 grant to keep us going till the end of the year, to raise some institutional capital from some of the best investors in the country. I think that journey, while in hindsight it looks great, I know when we both were going through it, we were just, is this going to actually materialize, etc. So I think that's been really, really, if I look back, like those first 6 months was a great start. And through the year, just getting to customers, our initial customers, was a fun ride, right? I think to close some of our marquee deals that we closed, we've taken probably 3 to 6 months more than what we had anticipated. But the fact that we have some of them is definitely exciting. And along the way, I think we found a fun set of people. And one thing I want to highlight on the podcast is a lot of different folks in climate feel that hiring talent is a little challenging. But for us, I feel like we got really, really lucky because we had a strong climate filter, which is when we hired for folks, we always would see have they done anything for the climate prior to coming. And I'm so fortunate, at least in the first 10 we have, each one of them have done some sort of impact towards the environment, and that shows that they have enough skin in the game, right? The whole missionary versus mercenary debate. So very, very grateful that we have this fun bunch, and also more importantly, inspired and passionate bunch alongside us in the ride. And I'm so grateful for it. And very excited to be building with them going into the next year.
Yeah, now it's 16 people in 9 cities. And we've been a company that's born in the pandemic, remote first. We've kind of grown as a remote first company too. And now we're planning to actually go hybrid as of next year. Because we have such grand ambitions of how we want to solve climate change. What are some of the common filters you think we've applied when we have found people? A lot of people have found us along the way, and we are lucky to have the two of us plus 14 more incredible climates, as we call them, on the team. And we have the good problem, touch wood, tooting our own horn, but the good problem of having a lot of people who would love to come onto the Climes team. Even now, it's almost around 100 people who apply in a week. What are some of the common filters that we have used, in scouting out and just really seeing if somebody's going to be that missionary?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the most fun part of the business till date, right? I think scouting and hiring talent has been something that I've really enjoyed. I know you enjoy it too as well. So I think we've been very, very careful. If I look at 2-3 traits, one is, I think, whether or not they believe in the cause rather than the role that they're performing today, right? I think in early stage startups, it's very transient. What you start off to do in an organization, you end up like pivoting multiple different times, right? Like even the core technology products you're building, or for that matter, the growth GTMs that you're doing, or the strategy itself pivots multiple times, right? So I think one of the filters that we use is one, mission oriented, and are you doing it for the cause? And second is agility to adapt quickly into conditions that you're thrown at, right? And that's something that I know both of us talk a lot about, agility in the prospective candidate. Second is resilience, right? Because especially in a sector like climate, which is still not as sexy as, let's say, a fintech or health tech or ed tech, right? It takes time to build a business. So resilience and perseverance to play the long game is something that we've really, really solved for, because climate, you don't see outcomes in 2-3 years. It's not a D2C brand, right? It is the long game. So we solve for resilience and perseverance in that sense. And 3, a large part of the compensation that we've given out to folks is more on the long-term equity growth, right? Rather than short-term compensation. I think it's sort of wanting them to stay the long haul with us, right? So I think the point 3 is an extension of point 2, which is, are you in it for the long run, right? So I think to say it in a metaphorical way, which is related to sports, we're looking for marathon runners rather than sprinters. And yeah, those are the kind of people we continue to want to engage with, at least till we get to about 20-25 people, right? The ones who are in it for the long haul.
And I love that definition, playing long-term games with long-term people, because climate in itself is a long game. If you're too impatient for results, you ain't going to last. I think that's where perseverance really kicks in. And this is, you have to be fully invested. Like, this is not just a job, right? Anybody who goes in the world of climate looking to solve any aspect of it, whether it's waste management or carbon or water, you have to be in it for the long haul and be able to actually persevere, right? So super excited about the fact that there's so many people pivoting into climate work from different aspects of life. But these are the common traits that we have definitely identified in talking to hundreds of folks over the last year and a half, right? And we're super proud of the team that we've built so far of 16 people across design, engineering, marketing, product growth. And yeah, it's just lovely when we find somebody who's as oriented to playing that long-term game with us too.
And I want to take a minute to also highlight how we found people, right? I think one of the things is we had Terra.do as a filter, which was the online climate school we both met in, right? Like,
and we just did an episode with Anshuman too.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
Too.
Exciting.
Founder of Terra,
yeah. So I mean, Terra is a good funnel for us, right? And second is we found Sri how, because he writes a climate newsletter. Yeah, I remember you told me, hey, check out this guy who's writing a cool climate newsletter, and then we found him organically. Through that, we found Payal because she was volunteering at Sus Mafia, found Yash because he was at Terra, right? Sabha because she was at Iora, which is another sort of environmental consulting firm. So like we kind of found people in the domain in very sort of strange circumstances, or rather a lot of it was outbound as well, seeing people who are doing work and then reach out rather than them reach out to us as well. So I think we've been very lucky in that regard.
Yeah, we've definitely been lucky, and hopefully that luck carries forward with us, because we're still in the very early stage of this long game. We haven't done nothing yet, but the little bit that we have, we need to celebrate it too. So when we first started, I want to ask you to unpack some of the contrarian truths we had. Right? What did we see that was broken, and why was Climes really born? what were the contrarian truths? Nobody else was seeing that. We said, my God, if somebody solves this, it's really going to make a big difference.
Yeah, I'm going to start and look at this problem two ways, right? Like what we saw on the demand side and what we saw on the supply side, right? I think on the demand side, it was very evident that, two things is not going to change. One is consumption is not going to stop, right? Like how much ever you would like for a human being to stop purchasing or live, a far more conservative life, I don't think human behavior is wired that way, right? Consumption is never going to stop, right? Obviously you can reduce the environmental impact on that consumption, or the second best option is to sort of neutralize that aspect of your life, right? I know it sounds like an easy way to buy yourself out of a problem, but we think that is not going to fundamentally change, right? Human behavior can't change overnight, right? So people will continue to consume, and one needs to find environmental alternatives to it that are more climate friendly. The second option is to neutralize the entire emissions, right? Second is climate finance and the carbon markets in general are extremely broken, right? There were 2-3 big issues. One, essentially lack of transparency. Two, not enough capital coming into the global south, right? To be honest, if you look at climate change, the developing countries are the ones that are going to have the worst implications of climate change, right? And there's not enough finance coming into the country, right? Could that problem be solved? That was what we saw on the demand side. On the supply side, we were seeing multiple different organizations in India work towards climate mitigation and adaptation, right? Whether it was through forestation, whether it was through energy efficiency, whether it was switch to regenerative agriculture. And they didn't have enough financial incentive to continue to do what they were doing, right? And if carbon removal had to scale, you have the exact numbers. I know it goes into billions. A lot of these solutions needed to be financed, right? And we felt that there was an opportunity, decadal opportunity, if we have to go net zero as a world by 2050 or 2070, right, and move towards a pathway to net zero, there has to be carbon removal and avoidance that needs to be funded and incentivized over the next decade, right? And that market is a huge market. I think those were the sort of 2-3 core insights and values through which we started that has stuck along the way, right? I think we've pivoted our direction through the journey over the last 1.5 years, keeping in mind these 3 assumptions, and I don't think this will change going into the next 2-3 years, right? So that's the beauty of starting with these assumptions and hoping to build, or rather will build a business model that is scalable and sustainable on its own.
And what do you think we've had to dump along the way that clearly didn't work? We believed that it would come true, we had a contrarian belief that we wanted to, bring into the world, but by being in the market, we realized that's actually not the case, and nor does it need to be. So where have we been proven wrong? And we've kind of learned our lessons and then pivoted slightly.
Yeah, I think one of the things is we really vastly overestimated how fast corporates would act on climate, right? Especially in India. I think we had that assumption that people will be slow in adoption, but we didn't really kind of expect them to move that slow, right? It's still a very bottom of the priority stack. That is one thing that we learned. And second is consumers do care, right, about the climate, but would they care repeatedly to come back and neutralize their footprint? I don't think so, right? I think that was the assumption that I feel we got wrong. We probably believed way too much in the consumer and consumer wanting to offset their footprint. I think that is something that has changed, or rather our assumption has gone wrong. I wouldn't say wrong. I think there is enough of a generation C that cares about it. It's just that to build a venture scalable model, we have to look at other avenues, right? I truly believe Gen Z, the Greta Thunberg generation is a large enough audience, but their time is still about 3-4 years from now, right? And it's just not attractive enough today from a business opportunity perspective. So I wouldn't say we're wrong. I think we're a little early to market. But hopefully over time, as we build this over the next 5-6 years, what we built on the consumer side is something that we think we'll get right. On the supply side, I think one of the things is because again we are technology enthusiasts, right? We definitely thought technology could solve problems much faster than we anticipated, or more accurately than doing it in a physical or an operational way, right? Like I think that itself is going to go through its learning curve. So I think these are the two things that really stand out for me in terms of what's worked, what hasn't worked, right?
And I think it's a great place to be, to admit that we actually don't know 99% of things. What we know and we try and execute on. But then only by being out there in the market and testing, we realize, hey, like there's actually new possibilities and new truths that are being discovered and unpacked. And there's a whole bunch of false truths that we realize they didn't make any sense. We believed them, but they didn't make any sense. And our ability to test as a company is actually going really, really fast, right? But knowing fundamentally that we don't know 99% of what all could work has been a really, really important part of our DNA. We only know this much, but we're constantly hungry to find out more. So in that journey, what sort of products have come up within the Climes ecosystem that have allowed us to create value where there was no value to be seen earlier?
I'll spin the answer in a different way, right? Like, I mean, between both of us, if you look at our styles of working, I pretty much like going at things at a very analytical way. You like going things that, okay, let's try it out, put it out there, and then make it work, right? I'll tell you where my analysis has come wrong, and I was pleasantly surprised, right? I think that
I love hearing the sound of that.
Yeah.
I love hearing the sound of that. When Sid says, I was wrong.
I think Zingbus, right? I really want to highlight this to the audience. I know you guys did an episode with Zingbus, but I'll put it on record, right? I was not convinced that Zingbus would be a large volume account for us. Because intuitively one would think tier 2, tier 3 India is a very value conscious, price sensitive market, right? They won't spend like 3-4% of their average order value on something that's not tangible like climate. Like that is what an analytical person, 9 out of 10 analytical individuals would say, right? But to see at a consistent basis over the last 6 months, right, 50% of their users continuing to opt in, right, to a climate friendly bus ride, I think that surprised me a lot presently, right? That's one thing that and to continue like now talking to different brands across segments of the market is something that we learned along the way, which I think is pretty cool. Second is we initially started off like carbon neutral events, right, as weddings. Like we started weddings off as a way to like build our carbon accounting models, right? Like quite literally that
with the wedding brigade, a very, very early believer in us.
Yeah, we started it out to like build our carbon accounting models, right? But now it's spun out to a full-fledged product of carbon neutral events, right? Again, to me, that's the power of 0 to 1 creation, right? Where you start with a small base and then let it compound. And today, I'm like really happy that, you know, like someone like an Airbus or a Hero, right, is using our events product in a do-it-yourself manner, right, to neutralize their events. It's a small start, right? Like, but a start nonetheless, right? Which sort of ties into I think one value that we wrote very early on: small enough to do, big enough to matter.
Yeah.
Right? And I think in that sense, those are the two products to me, or rather two things that surprised me pleasantly in our journey till date, right? How we spun off, or rather, one, we targeted an audience base that we really didn't envisage would pay for something like this. And second is, you know, how a small experiment now has turned out to be like a good GTM plus neutralization product for us.
Yeah, and as a spin-off from that, we have a third and fourth also that have come, right? Something that we call the carbon counter, which is a universal layer of carbon footprints across all sorts of products, right? And we've actually built that up as a sum of a couple of thousand data points which have been built in working with consumer brands on their specific use cases, like flights, like bus rides, like personal care, like fashion. That's allowed us to actually build a carbon counter where in the future, any organization will be able to use it to give a true cost, true environmental cost on top of the product that they showcase to their consumers, right? And that product has only been built because of the last year and a half of us going out there and forcing consumer brands either, to like just do it and take a leap of faith, or them reaching out to us and saying, hey, we're ready for this, integrate with us, right? And the sum of that has actually led to this beautiful product that we've only now started putting out into the market. The carbon counter doesn't actually get enough recognition yet, but there is a day when it becomes a universal layer, right? For any company to be able to find the true cost of their product and show it to whichever stakeholder they want to show it to, right? So have you found any value in that?
Oh, carbon counter, I really like. I think that's the product that's come most inbound to us, right? And I want to take a minute or two to like explain to folks what it does, right? Essentially, this product spits out the carbon footprint of any sort of either consumer product or a B2B offering, etc., right? And we started with 3-4 categories, right? One is any of your transportation needs, you can get it in one click now, right? Like, what is the carbon footprint of let's say a bus from X to Y distance, right? Or what is the carbon emissions of a shipment from, let's say, Delhi to Bangalore, right? This data is very, very valuable to companies now because they're starting to like price the environmental impact or the carbon impact in their supply chains, right? We think it's going to be a big product because a lot of companies now are coming and asking us, hey, how can we get the carbon footprint of XYZ, right? And we've started now doing that across different categories, right? For example, what's the carbon footprint of this shirt, right? With simplified inputs, we can spit out that data in less than 5 minutes, right? And the idea is to get the database to be so extensive that you can get it at a reasonable amount of accuracy instantly, right? And what we've realized is a lot of companies are now using it to demonstrate how climate friendly they are, right? There's a logistics company that now has done its route optimization to save carbon. Now they're using our footprint calculator to show their customers how climate friendly they are, right?
With avoided emissions.
Avoided emissions. And I think that is something that's really exciting for us is because, the do-gooders need to be rewarded in some form or the other. And the financial system globally with ESG, carbon price, etc., is going to reward people who are climate friendly, the Generation C, so to speak, right? And we think this product is really, really something that will help companies showcase that instantly, right? Which is what we are gunning for. And funnily enough, I think I was just talking to a customer earlier this week with the whole carbon cap and carbon price border coming into Europe, right? A lot of people who are exporting from India to Europe, right? For example, have to showcase the carbon impact on their particular offering, plus the carbon footprint of the shipment, etc., right? This product can actually solve that problem very instantaneously at a product level, and we're very excited to enable a bunch of these companies. So I'm very, very excited for Carbon Counter. Actually, it's the product that I think will really help us going into next year define and shape our company. So very, very excited for
same here. And the natural extension of that product is going to be carbon labels, which we're already testing with a few brands to see physically can they show the carbon footprint on the entire life cycle of that product to their consumer in a way that the consumer is excited to see it and actually wants to see it and respects the company for showing that number, right? Rather than calling them a polluter, saying, okay, I can't stop my consumption, I'm still going to keep buying something. I can make more carbon efficient choices, but at the same time, for whatever I do buy, show me the true cost, right? Where is that number going to come from? We think it's going to come from the carbon counter too. So it's really interesting how this evolution has happened, right? Where we really started with an event, a carbon neutral event, a wedding. And then from there, we ended up going into online checkouts. And then from online checkouts, found our way back into offline events. And then from there, in the sum of all of it, ended up building a really good database of carbon factors that can now be used by any company online or offline to show true cost, right? So it's kind of like this whole story comes together. It's only a year and a half in. We're still very, very early days in our long journey that we have set out for clients. But the fleet of products that's being built out now, it is an effective delivery mechanism for climate in an easily digestible way for individuals and organizations. And I think that's something I at least realized. A year and a half ago, I felt if we don't make climate action easy enough to do, if we don't make it economically viable, if we don't make it fun and sexy, it's just not going to happen, right? People will keep waiting for the future and somebody else to do it and say somebody else's responsibility. But why not make me want to do it, right? Everybody can play their part. If we are just convinced that it's so easily accessible, obviously required, economically viable, fun to do. And that's why the Climes products that are now being created, actually today we stand at 5 products. The Climes products are that easily digestible medium for the first step of climate action for an individual or for an enterprise. So we've got a long way to go. We have 13 consumer brand partners as of today who we're live with at the checkout. 6 enterprises that we work with as customers. 85,000 people that we have reached who've bought at least one Climb instrument so far. But 100 million more to reach, right, globally. And we define this audience as Generation Climate, Gen C, which is also the name of this podcast. And if I have to actually break down what Gen C comprises, it's not just people who are consuming in a more climate efficient way, it's also the brands who partner with us. Right? We have phenomenal brands who have taken that early leap of faith and plunge and said, we care, we want to do something, right? We want to be an agent of change in society. It's brands, it's enterprises, it's also financial institutions, right? Investors who are Gen C investors. We as a company are incredibly proud of the cap table we have because we found phenomenal partners so early on in our journey. So without naming anyone in particular, what are the common traits you found in that section, right? What makes an investor a Gen Z investor, and how have the folks who've partnered with us been with us? Like how have they helped? What differentiates them from all the rest?
Are you putting me on the spot here? Ani?
Without naming anyone, because they have been immensely valuable for us, and not just the ones on our cap table, but there are a few outside as well, right? Who are literally they champion Generation Climate and Gen C in ways that we could not have even imagined they would.
No, absolutely. So I'll tell you 2 things that again pleasantly surprised me in this journey, right? I still remember in 2021 when I was talking to a bunch of my investor friends, they were like, what are you doing in climate? Like, is climate going to make money, right? Like, I think we started 2021 there, right? And when I still remember this very well wisher of mine, right? Senior investor in the industry was like, climate, sorry for breaking into Hindi, usme paisa nahi banega, right? And I was like, okay, I heard that. I was like, hopefully I prove you wrong. Because I'd made up my mind on climate by then, right? It's good to see from where we were in 2021 to 2022, every big fund or every fund has a climate practice that is going on. Like that's how much the ecosystem has evolved in 2 years, right? Like that to me is like pleasantly surprising, which means that the Generation C universe is expanding far faster than we thought. When I remember me and you used to have this discussion, maybe 2024, 2025, we'll see more investor interest. I remember we spent a lot of time educating investors.
Yeah.
I think we spent 3 months educating investors on the potential of the climate ecosystem. Today, everyone calls us to say, within climate, what are the opportunities? That itself is a testament of how big the generation
gone from climate funds to traditional funds getting into climate, and now everybody else also getting involved.
To climate, right?
It's a full hockey stick.
It's so nice to see the ecosystem shaping up. That's one. 2 is, I think, investors are curious, right, in this space. I don't think they have answers to all solutions. And climate is such a nascent industry. Everyone's learning along the way. I think outside of renewable energy and now like clean transportation, right, all other spaces are literally white spaces, right? And the canvas is there to create. I mean, no one knows what's going to happen in carbon removal, right? No one knows how we're going to switch towards sustainable agriculture. There's a lot of R&D on green cement, on green steel, etc., but still not materialized at scale. How are we going to finance the next generation of electric vehicles, right? I think those are problems that are now being taken up on and are being solved at scale. So in that sense, someone told me this and it stuck with me, right? The climate tech industry is so wide, it should actually be called the transition industry. Transition of everything into climate-friendly options, whether it's consumer brands, whether it is energy, agriculture, industry. Everything has to move to climate alternative.
Anshuman calls that the new internet moment, where everything had to go online with the internet, and now it's like the climate moment, which is the new internet moment. Everything has to go into climate.
Absolutely. And that's how big the opportunity is for whoever is listening, right? The reason why the macro person in me, the macroeconomic person in me dived into climate was I kind of sense that, the TAM is going to be infinitely large. As long as you find your niches and find ways to build in this space, you will find an economic opportunity. You have to fine tune your economics, fine tune your business model. That will take time. But the minute you do that, the TAM is huge across each category. So just to potential folks looking to start up or looking to join climate startups, I think that's one thing that I'd like to tell you, that do not worry about the TAM. Just figuring out the right business model is where the PMF part of this industry lies, and once that is sorted, I think distribution is something that will come along the way.
Okay, so you actually took on the role of a potential new climate founder, right? Who's just about to start a new venture, saying climate tech, my God, I want to spend all my time on it. This is the place to be. Either it's because of all the noise surrounding climate tech, or it's just because it's such a big opportunity and such a big problem to solve, right? So that's the advice you give a new climate tech founder who's just starting out. Let's play some more roles as well. A person, a consumer, right? An average consumer who's just saying, hey, I want to make more sustainable choices in my own life. Where do they start?
Start collecting Climes. But no, jokes apart, I think there are enough number of sustainable brands coming out in the ecosystem, right? And as long as you can solve for the ones who aren't greenwashing, I think those are the ones that you can start consuming in, right? And I think one of the yardsticks that I look at, who are these brands that are willing to show their carbon footprint publicly, right? I know a bunch of our brands, Neiman, Sublime Life, etc., have been very, very open and transparent about showing the environmental impact of their products, right? These are brands that are willing to be out there, and I think that's one filter that you could start using as a consumer, right? In terms of understanding which brands actually walk the talk, or which brands just continue to talk. I think sustainable alternatives across each category is coming through. I think the number of Neiman shoes you have is ridiculously high. Even at my home, everyone's now a Neiman's convert. So that's one good thing that's happening, is that in each category you are starting to see climate alternatives. I think they're still a little pricey, but hopefully in the next 2-3 years that problem is going to solve, and then we could potentially see sustainable alternatives across all price points and categories.
And this is where, as Climes, one of our mottos is cut what you can, utilize what you can't. Honestly, in an ideal world, you wouldn't even need Climes, right? We are the second choice. We are there for the residual emissions that are still left. But as humans, we're never going to have zero consumption. We're always going to consume something.
Yeah.
So the first piece of advice we tell anybody, any individual or enterprises, cut what emissions you can, right? With better practices, with alternative practices. Put renewable energy on your rooftops. Replace your car with an electric car if it's possible. Go vegan or eat alternative proteins in your diet, right? There are very many choices you can make to lower your emissions. But the residual is where an option like Climes comes in to neutralize the balance. And I think the combo of both is actually not that hard to start with. Today, everybody has some choice they can exercise. It's just a question of discovering the right solution and the right brand to enable that choice into your lifestyle, right? So consumers actually have a far better time today than 2 years ago compared to 5 years ago, because today information is becoming far more available for how do you live a more sustainable life. So if anybody has any questions about that, please reach out to us too, because you're Gen Z then, Generation Climate. Okay, the next role you're going to play is, you've been working with the company for 5 years, you love it, you're with this big conglomerate, but now you started getting this flavor of man, I'm like more climate conscious. Why can't I like get this large organization to also start caring and doing something with a real sustainability mandate, right? So you are that intrapreneur. You know, you're not an entrepreneur, you're an intrapreneur.
Sustainability champion.
Within the company, yeah. So where do you start?
I think first I would start by like going to the organization and saying, look, what are you doing to help reduce the carbon footprint of the organization? Point one, right? Like measure your emissions first, right? Second is, what are the small enough to do, big enough to matter things that you can do? Can we transition our energy consumption to renewable, right? Can we move towards more carbon friendly, climate friendly transportation options? Can we carpool along the way, right? Like go and talk to like the CXOs to see what can be done to first measure and second start like taking the low hanging fruit and reducing those emissions, right? Third is education, right? And spread awareness, right? Like talk to HR, right? What can you do for climate? Like, can you enable awareness? Can you explain, or can HR talk to the entire team on measuring their carbon footprint? Sorry to push a shameless plug. People can use Climes to like measure their carbon footprint as well, right? Like get their employees to start measuring their carbon footprint and be conscious about it, right? And I think those are the top three things that a company can do. Like cut what you can, again, like you're saying, right? And the remaining is, as you educate consumers or rather your employees on climate action, right? You can also get them to neutralize their emissions, right? I think that's the last part, but an important part, just because people will then start to be more conscious about their consumption. And yeah, these are the 3-4 things that I would do as a sustainability champion, right? And more importantly, I also think that as and when you start doing these small, measuring the emissions, etc., like the management themselves will become more confident of going public with their climate goals, right? I think, like we say, right, once we start seeing small progress at the gym, then you're motivated to go and do more, get more done, right? I think starting off with these small sort of awareness campaigns, etc., is something that I would do immediately. And over time, obviously, as you see small results and the momentum, we think that the larger group themselves will want to get involved in this. I think start small is what I would say to some of these sustainability.
And climate entrepreneurship, or like being a sustainability champion within a company, is actually a really, really powerful leverage point. People don't realize how anybody can actually step up to that role, regardless of what role you actually have within the company. Today companies are looking for more sustainable choices to make. They're looking for people who can help them get there, right? So anybody, whatever you're doing, marketing, design, HR, whatever, you can put your hand up and tell your company, hey, I care. I want to like help chart our path to a more sustainable future. And odds are you'll actually be very well received from whoever you pitch this to. In fact, all the enterprise brands that we have partnered with at Climes, it is these climate entrepreneurs who have ended up finding us along the way. And they have been the champions for this carbon neutral or net zero carbon journey for their own company, and pushed till they've actually enabled that flywheel to start, right? So I think these sustainability entrepreneurs are kind of like fire starters. Or actually, no pun intended there, because fire starter would be bad for the planet. Ice cube starters. They're cooling down the planet within their company. And they have been, again, Gen Z folks, not having to leave an organization to go and build something from scratch. That's one route. Another route is make that change happen where you already are. Third route, make that change happen in your own home as a consumer, right? Or in your own neighborhood, in your own society. And then there's the last route. If you were to play the role of being within the government, where would you begin? In terms of charting a more net zero carbon future.
I think in the government, I feel like there has been more proactive action in climate. Like if I look back over the last 1.5 years, I think the Ministry of Forest, Environment and Climate Change have really started, embracing environment and climate, right? I think the Prime Minister himself did the whole LIFE program, etc., right? I think the government has definitely been more proactive than initially I would have thought a year and a half ago, which is exciting for climate and climate entrepreneurs, right? I think if I were the government, I would first see if my supply chains, governmental supply chains, are now starting to embrace, a more climate-friendly sort of. I wouldn't want to say supply chain, but like start embracing climate-friendly practices, right? That's the first thing I would do. And second is, I think the carbon policies are being framed, right? Like how can we now leverage carbon government assets to earn through carbon revenue? I think it's a low-hanging fruit that if you take like the next 5-6 years, if India has to get to net zero by 2070, figuring out how could government assets be leveraged to become carbon sinks, right? And how can the government monetize through carbon, right? Is going to be an exciting opportunity for the government. So I know a couple of folks at the ministry are looking at it actively, and very excited to see how the government continues to shape and drive the climate agenda in India.
Yeah, and one of the big bets we are making is India will become one of the biggest carbon sinks in the world, and really be supplying carbon credits in the form of, neutralization credits to global emissions. Hopefully, globally, we transition to more of a carbon neutral future with less carbon intensive practices. But for whatever the residual balance is, it's going to be countries along the equator, primarily India, that becomes the world's biggest carbon sink. Right? And how is that going to happen? Not by accident. It actually we have to very, very actively chart a pathway toward that by enabling flow of finance into new projects that continue to become more of a carbon sink. So let's hop out of the role of role playing and how the kind of choices you would make, and actually just go back into Climes a little bit. We're going into 2023 now. What sort of predictions, projections do you want to make for the future? From all that we have learned in the last 15 months, we start a new year with 12 to 14 consumer brands, 6 enterprises, 85,000 people, but a long way to go. What are the projections or predictions that you have in mind?
Yeah, so I think on both sides of the marketplace, I feel like the carbon counter product and APIs will continue to go at least to conservatively at least 40-50 brands will see themselves at checkout, will use Climes at checkout. I also think the carbon counter product is going to be something that I'm very excited for, and carbon labels, right? I think these are the two products that we'll not only start in India but explore taking it out of India as well. So if I look at the product stack on the demand side, I think those two are exciting. I feel like events will end up becoming a product where it's going to be self-serve, and organizations across the globe will want to start using it, because the beauty of software is anyone across the globe can use it, right? So I think those are the 2-3 things that I'm very, very bullish on. I think carbon counter to showcase carbon avoidance potential, right, is going to be a big use case we'll stumble upon and hopefully find product market distribution fit, especially with exporters, right? I think that's exciting. On the supply side, I think getting to at least 1 million, 2 million tons of carbon sinks through nature-based solutions. That's something that I'm looking forward to, and I think it's achievable. I don't think either of them are big, hairy, audacious in that sense. Objectively looking, I feel like these are the across both sides of the marketplace, these are the kind of progress we can make. And hopefully 1 or 2 new products, right? The good part about being still in a 0 to 1 is to launch products that we think could potentially scale significantly as well.
Yeah, beautiful answer. And a word about how Climes culture is evolving for the next set of people out there who would love to get on board and join our ship.
I think the work is only going to get more meaningful and impactful because the platform has been set. Right, by the first 15 who've come, I feel like they've done the grunt work of setting up the platform, which itself looked very, very hard 12-15 months ago. But I think the next 15 months, if I look at it, because you have a platform to now make significant impact using your skills, functional skills. I think the Climes platform is going to be exciting for you to make larger impact than before. So I'm very, very excited to unlock the next journey. And this is the journey that I particularly like, which is taking things from 1 to 10. So very, very excited for what's to come. Culture-wise, I think, we want to work hard, work smart. I think that will continue to remain an ethos, and we are a bunch of super passionate people. So passion is something that we'll continue to look for.
Supremely creative. I think we have a crazy creative team with a lot of shiny object syndrome too. we have a lot of people who excel in 0 to 1s and chase after any new opportunity. And that's wonderful, right? But at the same time, combining that with the ability to actually deliver products at scale to millions of people, I think that's the evolution that we're going into now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the beauty of the startup journey. You'll have certain 0 to 1s, you'll have hopefully lots of 1 to 10s, and 1 or 2 products that take you from 10 to 100. So very excited for the next 12-15 months, and I'm particularly excited because we might end up doing a lot more globally as well. So
yeah, absolutely. We may go global next year. So to all our listeners, we are a team that continues to be small. We want to remain small. We want to remain extremely creative. We're working on the single biggest problem of our times with also the single biggest opportunity. We have a bunch of really cool products we've built that enterprises and consumer brands and people are benefiting from. If you're out there looking for your next big, meaningful role in life, reach out to us, either Sid or to me.
Founders at Climes.io, that's a common ID.
Founders at Climes.io, absolutely. But culture-wise, I think the people we found along the way are, for us, the single biggest thing we're proud of. And each person has a story of how they, got on board this little ship. Why they choose to do so, you'll have to ask each of them independently. Sometimes even I wonder why. But we're lucky to have them on this journey regardless. And, as Sid mentioned earlier, it's a long-term game with long-term people. And solving climate change is not an easy problem, as you can imagine. It's the single hardest problem we could have ever imagined taking on. And there's so many times where we wonder, are we doing the right thing? Are we out of our depth? What are we even working on, right? Because we're not making any difference. But at the same time, having that hope and optimism for a better, cleaner, safer, fairer future, I think is what keeps us going. And hope and optimism is what drives that perseverance to just wake up every day, show up and say, we got to keep moving ahead, man, because we don't have a choice. With this problem that we've taken on, we only have a 6-year window to solve it, right? So it's going to take all hands on deck, lots of resources, great product delivered at scale to make climate action supremely easy for companies and individuals to get on board, right? And that's why the Climes engine exists. We're only a year and a half in, but we're still less than 10% of our journey in.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sid, for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yet another episode of the Voice of Generation Climate, the Voice of Gen Z. It's been a good summary of the year and where we're headed in the future. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.